In the light of recent events, there has been quite a bit of tension amongst people in the online world, which is slowly translating into the real world. Whether you're in the UK, across European countries, the US, the West in general, we can't deny that there's been a rise in fascism, blatant racism, anti-immigration sentiments, and a whole lot of other stuff. And with the passing of Charlie Kirk, a popular political commentator from the US, the reactions from people to his death has been really interesting as an outsider looking in, to say the least. Whilst in this video, I mean no harm to the Charlie Kirk's family, I want to talk about the price and the lessons that we can learn that come along with being involved in the game of politics, especially when you put yourself forward to be the representative for a particular ideology. Charlie Kirk was the co-founder of Turning Point USA, a conservative youth organization, and its main aim was to essentially mobilize young conservatives and counter the left-leaning type of politics. And many know him from his media presence, where he shared his polarizing political views on issues such as abortion, immigration laws, critical race theory, and also his racist views.
We would have said 3 weeks ago, Blake, if we would have said that Joy Reid and Michelle Obama and Sheila Jackson Lee and Ketanji Brown Jackson were affirmative action picks, we would have been called the racist. But now they're coming out and they're saying it for us. They're coming out and they're saying, I'm only here because of affirmative action. Yeah, we know. You do not have the brain processing power to otherwise be taken really seriously. You had to go steal a white person's slot to go be taken somewhat seriously.
And as you can see, he had a lot to say about black women in the US, especially the former First Lady Michelle Obama. He often debated with university college students, and he had a large following, as well as being a very big Trump advocate. Ever since his death, I've been seeing how torn his reputation was, with one side crying and mourning his death, while others are indifferent or even happy about it. However, there's one thing that I noticed when listening to Charlie Kirk's talking points and other political commentators, and it's that many of them, regardless of which side they're on, whether they're right-leaning or left-leaning, many of them, if not all of them, are being sponsored and pushed to spread a certain ideology, and they are pushed and sponsored by people way bigger than them. A quick Google search will tell you that Turning Point USA is actually being sponsored by several conservative politicians and various Christian universities, as well as other political figures. So essentially what this means is that whoever sponsors you, or in this context, whoever sponsors an organization has the right to control the narrative of the said organization. They can call first dibs because they are funding the organization. Without them, the organization does not exist. So keep this in mind whilst watching this video. And this is what I think was the situation for Charlie Kirk. He was a mouthpiece, a representative to spread conservative ideology, far-right conservative ideology, to the point of being discriminative and racist. And I'm not saying that he didn't believe in the words that he said, but when you look at the bigger picture, he was being used by the powers that may be to stir up commotion and spread that far-right ideology to influence the masses. And that's why in this video, I want to talk about the lessons that we can learn from people like Charlie, who decide to be representatives and who decide to be used to push a specific ideology, and the price that comes along with that. And in this case, the ultimate price that resulted in his death. So let's start from lesson 1. Don't be a mouthpiece for anybody. Never become the mouthpiece for someone else's political or social agenda. When you do, you're not seen as a person, you're seen as a tool. Tools are useful only as long as they can serve their purpose. Once they're no longer needed, they are discarded without hesitation. An example of this was when Candace Owens, another popular political commentator in the US, a conservative one at that, was fired, or rather, as she puts it, stepped down from the Daily Wire show, which is a conservative media company. And this happened right after she made comments about her disagreement towards how Israel is acting towards Palestine. Before she made those comments, she was pushing the right-wing agenda that the Daily Wire likes to showcase. But the Daily Wire was co-founded by Ben Shapiro, who is another political popular commentator who happens to be a Jew who allegedly supports the actions of Israel. And when you put two and two together, you can tell that Candace being fired or stepping down in quotation marks was not because of the work that she was producing, but rather she no longer became useful to the Daily Wire because she was going against what the leaders were about. They didn't like what she said about Israel, so what did they do? They dumped her. She no longer became a useful tool, and she was discarded as a tool. Which brings me to lesson 2. You are expendable. In the political machine, no one is irreplaceable. Even though Charlie was murdered by a student, the higher-ups will replace him with a swiftness. Whoever sponsored him will find someone else to replace him. There will be another white, far-right wing conservative man who will be willing to take his place at the right price. This shows you how futile the role of being a mouthpiece is. You are literally only a cog in a much bigger system. Never overestimate your value to people who see you as disposable. Because trust me, they will always find a way to replace you. Lesson 3, don't buy into extremism. Buying into extremist ideologies of any kind is dangerous. It requires you to constantly push a negative rhetoric that not only drains your energy, but it also taxes your emotions. The more polarizing the group and ideology, the more it feeds on negativity and the more effort it takes to keep performing that negativity publicly. And that kind of life always comes with a heavy cost. You see Charlie Kirk, how he was going from one university, one college to another, debating with students. He was being invited to these universities. That is how he made his money. But you can just imagine how emotionally taxing it can be to having to keep performing the same performance after time to keep your bosses happy. You're not free, which nicely fits in with lesson 4. Be mindful of the energy that you put out. The energy that you put out into the world and how you treat people will eventually come back to you. Charlie held xenophobic and racist views whilst presenting himself as a Christian. And for some reason, him being a Christian gave him a pass within the conservative space to spew all the hatred that he spewed. Oh, also because he's white too, a white man at that. So it's no surprise that many people openly rejoiced at his death. Imagine having people rejoicing your death because of the hatred you decided to spread, which resulted in you accumulating all this negative energy. If you sow division, ignorance, hostility, you really should not be shocked when people respond with the same energy. Lesson 5. Embrace neutrality, especially in public. Black women in particular really need to understand the power of neutrality. People often expect us to be bold, outspoken, and opinionated, but you really have to be mindful of situations like that. Because you can be at work and some colleagues will ask you for your opinion on a particular topic that happens to be controversial. And usually there are two motives for this. One of them being they want to bait you out, and the other being they're just asking out of pure curiosity. In these cases, and I would say both of these cases, it's almost always better to just not entertain these people and just keep calm, neutral, even if you do have an opinion. The reason is because it can be used against you. Being a minority means that you are prone to be endangered and you can be thrown under the bus, especially when you have an opposing political view. Not every conversation deserves your energy, and sometimes your opinion has already been shared by someone out there, which means that you don't actually have to say anything. You don't need to add any extra echo. Remaining calm and neutral can actually protect you, because in a society where you're already a minority and also prone to be discriminated against, being outspoken can actually make you a target. So choosing your battles wisely is crucial. Last but not least, lesson 6. The risk for prominent Black women in the political game is higher. For prominent Black women, the stakes are even higher. I've mentioned figures like Candace Owens. She should really be careful with how she moves in this political arena. She's been involved in so many controversies as of late, which shows to me that whoever is sponsoring her is really pushing her to be the face of a particular agenda that they want to showcase. And although her talking points reflect a lot of the talking points that white Christian conservative men have, she isn't going to be treated like a white conservative Christian man, nor will she be given the benefit of the doubt if she is in hot water. In a political system where pawns are discarded without a thought, she risks being the first to be sacrificed if there happen to be tensions that escalate, or if there ever happens to be a purge where they're just trying to eliminate all political commentators. I don't know when that will happen or if that's going to happen, but we can't rule situations out like that. So being visible and outspoken is great for influence, but there's also another side to it, and it's that the exposure that you have can actually bring you to be endangered. And all of these lessons that I've talked about aren't exclusive to just the political arena. A lot of them are quite inclusive for pretty much all aspects of life. A prime example of this is the YouTube space, in particular the Black women empowerment YouTube space. I think it's quite important to not fall into the trap of being restricted to one way of thinking and be influenced to do so. Different creators have their own ways of expressing their opinions, even if it's on the same topic. And whilst you're listening to these opinions, it's important to switch on your critical thinking skills and analyze what people are saying. Does it make sense? Does it cause harm to other people? Is it spreading hateful rhetoric? Can this be applied in my life? Will I be able to actually see the benefits when applying what I'm hearing in my life? These are some of the questions that you need to be thinking about when listening to anyone in regards to anything. This will make you less prone to fall into these extremist traps, because essentially when you are an extremist, it's also synonymous with being close-minded. So be aware of that. What do you all think about the Charlie Kirk situation and the lessons that we can learn from this situation? Let me know in the comment section, and I'll see you in the next one.